Golfunity, the most popular golf infotainment podcast in town.
Welcome back to Golfunity, the most popular golf infotainment podcast in town. This is episode 30, folks.
It's great to be here. We've got predictions, who the sources think might win, some dark horses, history, kind of the whole deal.
Right. So our mission today, let's just jump into this deep dive, tear these sources apart, and, make sure you walk away totally clued in. Who to watch, what makes this U.S. Open unique.
And maybe find some surprises about, well, what everyone calls the toughest test in golf.
Exactly. And you can't talk toughest test without starting at the venue, right? Oakmont Country Club, Western Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. If you know anything about major venues, Oakmont isn't just a tough course. It's, legendary. It's known for being one of the most brutally difficult tests anywhere, period.
Totally. And this is the 10th time it's hosting the U.S. Open. So it's got this deep history with the championship.
A history that the sources definitely paint a clear picture about, especially when it comes to scoring.
Yeah. And that picture's pretty stark, isn't it?
It really is. According to the data we pulled, Oakmont's scoring average, get this, it's been at least 2 strokes over par in every single round it's ever hosted the U.S. Open since the first time.
Wow. Every single round.
Every single round. Think about that. The field as a whole has never averaged even just 1 over par for a round here in the U.S. Open.
That stat just screams what this course demands, doesn't it? It's not just precision.
No, it's like an almost absurd level of mental toughness you need.
It feels like it's just built for punishment. That thick, grabby rough, those crazy deep bunkers, the church pews, and the greens. Oh, man, the greens.
Notoriously fast.
So fast, incredibly sloped. If you end up on the wrong side of the hole, uh-oh.
Yeah. Potential disasters, right?
We saw that back in 2016, remember, when Dustin Johnson won. His performance, it wasn't about making tons of birdies.
No, it was pure survival, minimizing mistakes.
He had that one amazing bogey-free round, which was rare, but overall, birdies were just hard to come by. Winning there is about keeping bogeys off the card and, crucially, avoiding anything worse.
Which leads us right into the players the sources are flagging as the most likely contenders this week.
Okay.
But it's not just a list of names. They really dig into what each of these top guys specifically needs to do, to handle Oakmont and actually lift the trophy.
All right, let's rip into these favorites then. Scotty Scheffler, predictable maybe, but he's the big one.
World number 1.
Yeah.
And his form right now is, well, it's borderline unbelievable.
Yeah, the sources point to those 3 recent wins, including the PGA Championship and the Memorial just now.
And what makes him the guy to beat, according to the analysis, is just how incredibly well-rounded his game is. He's ranked inside the top 25 in all the strokes gained categories.
All of them?
All of them. And, okay, just to give you a sense of the level he's at, the fame, the sources had this genuinely wild anecdote about him.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Apparently, he had to delete his Venmo account.
His Venmo? What? Why? Was he, settling bets with buddies or something?
Slight chuckle. No, even crazier.
Yeah.
He apparently told the sources he got rid of it because people were literally sending him money when he won tournaments.
No way.
Yeah. Or requesting money from him when he didn't win.
That's insane.
I mean, can you imagine being so famous, so good, that strangers are just hitting you up on Venmo? It's kind of the absurd side effect of being Scotty Scheffler right now.
That is absolutely nuts. Okay, all right, moving on from the human ATM machine. Bryson DeChambeau, another big name.
Yep. Reigning U.S. Open champ from 2024. Remember that crazy finish against Rory last year?
Oh, yeah, dramatic. And he won in 2020, too.
Right. And DeChambeau's superpower, highlighted in the sources, it's the driving.
Power.
Huge power. He's always at or near the top in distance, strokes gained off the tee, how they measure performance. And he's been super consistent in majors stateside recently. Top 6 finishes in his last 7 starts, I think it was. The sources do note, though, he's been messing around with new scoring clubs.
Yeah.
Trying to sharpen up the iron play, which maybe hasn't quite matched the elite driving.
Gotcha. Then there's Jon Rahm, 2021 U.S. Open winner, another 2-time major champ.
And the sources mention his really solid play on LAV. He had that streak, right, 20 straight top 10s before just recently finishing outside that.
And crucially, he's been bringing that form to the majors, too. 3 straight top 15s.
Yeah, but for Rahm, specifically at Oakmont, the sources pinpoint avoiding double bogeys. That's the key.
But he can get aggressive.
Exactly. He's known for that aggressive style, which is great sometimes, but it can lead to him trying shots he maybe shouldn't, especially if he gets frustrated. And those mistakes turn into big numbers, like doubles.
Right.
They mentioned an example from Quail Hollow where double just killed his round.
Uh-huh.
And at Oakmont, where getting even one stroke back is incredibly hard, and
Yeah.
double bogey is just devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. Killer.
So for Rahm, the sources are saying it's about patience, knowing when to just take your bogey and, walk away.
Makes sense. And then, of course, Rory McIlroy. Always in the mix.
Yep. Won the U.S. Open way back in 2011 and finally got that Masters earlier this year. Career Grand Slam.
Huge. But the sources do mention his recent form hasn't been great. A bit rocky. Even missed the cut at the Canadian Open right before this.
Yeah, and the sources identify kind of two big things for Rory this week. Swing factors, you could say.
Okay.
One is his driver confidence, and the other is maybe potentially his motivation now that he's got the Grand Slam.
Ah, interesting. The driver thing.
He's apparently been struggling with a new driver setup, making some defensive swings, battling a different miss pattern than his old reliable one. And if he can't trust the driver, well, that takes away his biggest weapon.
Right. It neutralizes his advantage.
And the motivation thing, the sources sort of speculate, now that the massive weight of the Grand Slam is off his shoulders, has some of that intense fire maybe dimmed a little.
Could be.
But despite any recent struggles, you got to look at his U.S. Open record. It's fantastic. 6 straight top 10s. He knows how to handle this championship, even if he's come up just short the last couple of years.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how even these absolute top guys have specific things, aspects of their game or their mindset, that the sources are flagging as potential hurdles, especially for a place like Oakmont.
Exactly. And they touched on a few others too, considered favorites and what they need to sharpen up.
Right, like Xander Scheffler, reigning PGA champ.
Yeah, for him, it's finding that complete game again. Sources point out his driving and putting, which were so good last year, have kind of dipped this season.
Okay. And Morikawa.
Colin Morikawa needs to work on his finishing. He's great tee to green, obviously, but has had these lapses late in rounds, late in tournaments that have cost him focus maybe.
Right. Ludwig Oberg, huge talent.
Immense talent.
Yeah.
But he's had a bit of an up and down mid-season. Needs to find that consistency again, especially with the irons and putter that had him looking like one of the world's best earlier on.
And Joaquin Niemann.
Niemann's been winning big on LIV, but the sources say he's often looked kind of tight in the majors. Needs to find a way to play with that same freedom on the biggest stages.
Okay, so we've got the big names, there's specific challenges, it's all laid out. But what about the guys, outside that absolute top tier? Did the sources mention potential sleepers? Guys who could maybe shock everyone at Oakmont?
Oh, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting, especially if you're thinking about betting or just who to keep an extra eye on.
Right.
These aren't just random picks. They're players with specific recent form or game profiles that the sources argue really suit a U.S. Open test like Oakmont.
Okay, like who? I saw Ben Griffin mentioned. $55 odds in one source.
Yeah, Ben Griffin. The sources literally called him the hottest golfer on the PGA Tour right now. Well, apart from Scheffler.
High praise.
Look at his last 3 starts. T8, a win, and then second place, including at the Memorial, which is often seen as a really tough U.S. Open style test.
Wow, that's serious form.
Now, it is his first U.S. Open, so that's a factor for sure. But you just can't deny that recent run. The question is, can he bring that fire to the absolute biggest stage?
Interesting. And what about Harris English? He was listed around 101.
English is highlighted for, the perfect Oakmont game profile. Accuracy, really good ball striking, consistency.
Stuff you need there.
Exactly. The sources describe him as having the right kind of demeanor, too, to handle the inevitable bad bounces and frustrations Oakmont throws at you. Plus, he's done well in U.S. Opens before 3 top 10s and just finished runner-up at the PGA Championship.
Okay, so he fits the mold.
He's a prime example, yeah. Traits fitting the demands.
We also saw a few other names float around. Maverick McNeely, noted for being level-headed, T5 at Memorial.
Daniel Berger, good driving accuracy, solid distance.
And Nick Taylor, great ball striking this year, finds fairways, controls his irons, even if he's not the longest hitter.
Yeah, all these guys have specific tools in their bag that match up well with what Oakmont asks for.
Yeah.
If the big favorites stumble over their own specific hurdles.
One of these guys could sneak through.
Absolutely. Someone with the right skill set, hitting form at the right time, definitely could happen.
Cool. Okay, so beyond the individual players, The sources also kind of zoomed out, right? Looked at historical trends from past U.S. Open winners to see what characteristics keep popping up.
Yeah, and some of that history is just wild. Like the original trophy actually burned up in a clubhouse fire.
No way.
Yeah, and the very first U.S. Open was just a one-day event. Or international players winning the first 16 before an American finally broke through. There was even a par 6 hole once in U.S. Open history. Plus, in the Legends with 4 wins, Anderson, Jones, Hogan, Nicklaus, and Tiger's ridiculous 15-shot win. Just cool golf trivia.
It really is cool stuff. But the analysis we looked at went deeper, didn't it? Using specific stats based on recent winners, what were those key metrics they looked at?
Okay, so the sources identified 4 main criteria that recent U.S. Open champs consistently met. First, being ranked inside the top 50 in the world golf rankings, the OWGR.
Okay, makes sense. Top player.
Second, having at least one podium finish, so top 3 earlier that season, showing good form coming in.
Right.
Third, averaging at least plus .75 strokes gained per round over the last 3 months. That's a baseline. But the benchmark average for past winners was actually an elite plus 1.95 SG per round.
Wow, okay, high bar.
And fourth, averaging at least plus .84 strokes gained off the tee over that same 3-month stretch. Driving matters.
Okay, those are some pretty demanding filters. So when the sources actually applied those 4 historical trend criteria to the current field heading to Oakmont, what happened? Who fit the bill?
This is what's absolutely fascinating and honestly kind of stunning. After running the numbers, applying all 4 of those criteria from past winners, the analysis in one source narrowed the entire field of 156 players down to just 3 names.
Wait, seriously? Only 3? Who?
Scotty Scheffler, Bryson DeChambeau, and Jon Rahm.
Just the top 3 guys we started with. That's it. Nobody else met all 4.
That's it, exactly. The sources point out that DeChambeau and Rahm have been particularly strong off the tee recently, which lines up with that crucial SG off the tee requirement. Scheffler, well, he's strong off the tee too, but he really stands out as the most dominant and well-rounded across all categories, especially approach play, where maybe the other 2 have shown some slight dips this year.
So does this historical trend thing basically say it's a 3-horse race, according to the stats?
It strongly suggests that, yeah, that the profile of a player who historically wins this thing based on these specific numbers aligns perfectly with those 3 right now. It really highlights the huge challenge of the U.S. Open and maybe the likelihood that you need a top player with a very specific high-level game to conquer it. But the sources are definitely careful to remind us this is still golf.
And Oakmont, maybe more than any other course. It just breeds unpredictability. Stats tell a story, a compelling one, but they don't always run at the final chapter on Sunday afternoon. Right. Anything can happen. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Putting it all together, why does this deep dive into the 2025 U.S. Open matter to you, the listener, tuning in this week?
Well, because you're not just flipping on a golf tournament. You're watching the absolute best players in the world go up against what many genuinely believe is the hardest golf course on earth.
Yeah.
And now you know why Oakmont is so brutal. You know the big names, sure, but more importantly, you know the specific challenges each one faces this week, right?
Scheffler's insane form versus the pressure cooker, Rahm's aggression against those double bogeys, Rory's driver issues versus his history here, DeChambeau's power versus needing sharp irons.
Exactly. And, you know, the traits that might let a sleeper, like maybe a Ben Griffin or a Harris English, actually hang around and contend.
Plus, you've got that historical stat filter in your back pocket, telling you who should win based purely on the numbers.
But with that big asterisk that Oakmont and the U.S. Open love surprises.
Right. It's knowing the course, the players' specific games for this test, and the history. That whole combination makes watching this week, June 12th to the 15th, live from Oakmont, Pennsylvania, just so much richer.
Yeah, it gives you a much deeper appreciation for the insane skill and maybe even more, the mental toughness required.
Okay, and that wraps up our deep dive into the sources for the 2025 U.S. Open. We've kind of walked the treacherous fairways of Oakmont. We've dissected the favorites and their potential pitfalls. We looked at some interesting sleepers who fit the course.
And we apply those historical trends that point, well, a very narrow finger at who should win, statistically speaking.
It's a championship that just demands everything.
Every part of the game.
So here's the thought to maybe chew on as you watch this week. Drawing from that tension, between the hard data and the sheer beastliness of the venue, given how demanding the stats say this championship is and how that historical analysis boiled it down to just Scheffler, DeChambeau, and Rahm, is this the year the numbers finally nail it? predict the winner with spooky accuracy.
Or is Oakmont just too wild, too unforgiving? Is it a beast that no statistical model can truly tame, leaving the door wide open for total chaos?
That's the question, right?
That really is the beauty of this championship. You never quite know.
Couldn't have said it better. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this deep dive here on Golfunity, the most popular golf infotainment podcast in town.
Always fun.
Hey, make sure to ring the bell, follow us on social media, all that good stuff so you don't miss our future deep dives into the golf world and everything else. Join us next time for episode 31.
Head over to our social media.
Yeah?
Tell us what you think.
Let's hear it.
And give us your predictions for the future of golf.
Until next time.
Keep it in the fairway.
And hit 'em straight.